Hello there and welcome to ZeroXP. We are a show that sits down twice a month to talk about games, and particularly one game series, Fable. This episode we're actually going to bring you one of our bonus episodes, which we'll be discussing VR this week. Normally we'll use these bonus episodes to discuss a variety of different game-related topics, spanning from recent news to reflection and speculation of past and current game generations. I'm sitting here with my co-host, who is the heart and soul of our show, Patrick.
Hello.
You can find us across all major podcast platforms. If we're not on one that you particularly enjoy, please let us know. You can also find an enhanced video of each show by searching for ZeroXP Webcast on YouTube. If you would like to contact us directly, you can by emailing us at zeroxppodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at ZeroXPWebcast. On this week's show, as I've said, we're going to be sitting down and talking about virtual reality and why now might be the time to consider a VR headset for Xbox. So to backtrack just a little bit, we're kind of playing around with starting a series of episodes that the premise is going to be why now is the time for insert thing here.
Or even if they should.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good way to put it. Should, just because they can do it, should they do it?
Yeah.
Jurassic Park. So we've kind of speculated on a few things already through some of our other shows, but most recently we did a show, if you want to give it a listen, speculating on the idea of like an Xbox kart racer.
Yep. I'll put that at the end of the video. Yeah,
I was pretty happy with the way that turned out, and we decided kind of this might be a good direction to go. So, let's get into it. How do you feel about VR, Patrick?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So, you're a better gauge for this than I am. I've been hesitant to jump into it. I love the idea, but the money behind having to do it. I don't own a PlayStation, which is kind of the most affordable way to get into it right now if you already have a PlayStation 4 or
even
a PlayStation 5.
Some of the Oculuses, those are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Those work standalone too.
Right, and I don't have a gaming computer. I know, it's a video game web show or whatever, a podcast, whatever you want to call it, and my main means of playing games currently is Nintendo and Xbox. But between PSVR and the Oculus Quest now that's available, VR is getting cheaper to get into. They've just released the Oculus Quest 2. Microsoft has said numerous times that VR is not something they're pursuing because they don't think it's something that gamers feel like they have to have.
Yeah, the crazy thing was, what was it, 3-4 years back at E3 they showcased it, and then that was pretty much it from
It was
then
in
on.
conjunction with the Xbox One X before it came out.
Yeah, back when it was had a different name.
Yeah, it was the Scorpio. No, it wasn't Scorpio. Was it Scorpio?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So.
So it's interesting you bring that up because at E3 that year, they kind of implied that they weren't going to directly make a VR headset, that they were going to leave the door open for third-party companies to do it. I think Samsung specifically was brought on stage. I could be wrong there. It's been quite a while.
Was it HTC?
Maybe that's what it was. But it never came to fruition. There hasn't been a headset for the Xbox.
Yeah.
We also have the HoloLens, which was heavily talked about, but never really brought to market as a mass consumer product.
Yeah.
You can buy one, but it's pretty limited in what you can do with it.
Yeah, that one, it seemed like they were never fully invested in.
Okay, so you do have the PSVR.
Yes.
I think if I were to go out and buy a headset at this point, I would probably go with the Oculus Quest. I do have some caveats with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But you think that there should be a dedicated headset for the Xbox now? Is that the stance you're taking?
No. I don't think it has to be. It might help if there's one specific one they go with, but I don't think that they need necessarily the, this is the official Xbox headset.
Okay.
But I do think it'd be better if they maybe worked with one of these other companies, and especially with HTC has had a little more issues, so I could see where they might be looking for a partnership, plus they have good tech.
See, I think that since they already have a partnership with Samsung, I could see that facilitating a thing.
On Facebook, too. They
And
have a
that's what I was
partnership.
going to say, but they also have a partnership with Facebook.
Yeah, I can see that, but hopefully if they were to do a partnership, they wouldn't have to tie it in with Facebook. 'Cause
Right.
you know now with
You
that,
have to have a Facebook account in order to do Oculus.
and if you delete it, you lose your library.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have my problems with that. That is why I haven't pulled the trigger, I
Yeah.
think mainly on a
Yeah.
Quest. But before we get into the hardware itself, Patrick, we discussed bringing up this topic first because of the companies that Microsoft
Yeah.
has acquired.
Yeah.
So let's get into that and make the argument for why now would be a good time for Xbox to breach that new territory. Go.
And one of those reasons is with all the new studios that they've had, a lot of them have already gone into VR on their own. I'm going to just list off a few all the studios that have done VR titles. At Compulsion, they actually made a Uncle Jack Live, which is kind of a side thing for We Happy Few. I guess you're a producer on a show. We'll probably play a game clip. I'm not super familiar with that one, but reviews-wise, it seemed like it was all right. It was a nice companion game, and I believe it's free. So
That's funny. I'd never even heard of it.
Yep. Double Fine made a Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin,
Yep.
which reviewed well and people seemed to like. They also published a game called Nog, which is a good puzzle game. I didn't buy it, but I played the demo, and it was quite a bit of fun. One that I didn't know about was In Exile made a VR game, which I didn't realize.
I didn't know that either.
It's a Mage's Tale, which doesn't surprise me. It's basically a 3D dungeon crawler. I watched a video. It looked pretty fun, though.
Oh, cool.
Mojang, obviously, there's a VR version of Minecraft
Right.
out there. Ninja Theory has gotten pretty deep into it. They made a horror game called Nicodemus, Demon of Evanishment.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an odd name. I'm probably completely botching that.
That's okay.
You can look it up. They made a VR version of Hellblade.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm need to look up more of that because I want to know if it keeps the third person. I would assume with that combat it does, but
I would think that it does.
Yeah.
But that world being so dark and shadowy and you know, the light base of it could be super creepy that close.
yeah. And then, well, this one they just consulted on, so I'm not sure how in depth it was, but they were credited for the Vader Immortal game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's anything Xbox could use or not, but
No, but it might be something that they can license.
Yep. And then I'm not gonna go studio by studio on the Bethesda ones because it does get a little bit complicated because they kind of co-develop a lot of these.
Okay.
You got Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, Skyrim, Fallout 4, full games, not partial games, Doom VFR, Elder Scrolls Blades, which I don't think people liked very much.
No, I don't think it was well received.
And then this last one is pretty heavily rumored. It was leaked through a retailer, which tends to be true.
Kind of I'd say 40-60 chance on a lot of those.
Prey VR
I can see
is a
that.
title they're working on.
That would be cool.
With that, out of the ones that were legit, like the studio made it, and to my knowledge they own it, that's about 11 to 14.
Yeah. So
3 debatable.
We've talked about, you know, facilitating this. Is this something that to you would be, obviously it's not going to be available with Sony. I mean, I would be shocked. But if you did own a different headset, is it something that you would make a Game Pass available or even xCloud app based kind of route to take to access these games, or is this something that you would just simply make Game Pass ready on the Xbox Series coming forward?
I think I just make it. You mean like, would we include, or would you include the old games?
I'm saying, well, yes, for sure, but I'm saying, like, is this something that you would be speculating that you would include on the Xbox console, or just available through the PC through the Xbox Live platform?
The console. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For sure.
See,
I think that a part of a way that they could keep the headset price down, or at least make it better, would be to be able to use the Xbox Series X to power these games, or help power them.
I guess that's kind of, when we started talking about the premise of this, the way that I leaned is, I think that if they were able to kind of designate or give the ability of a third party to create the headset either specifically for it, or use or one of the existing headsets that are out on the market to tie into this, it would be a great way to do it without really costing Microsoft anything other than publishing or republishing the VR games for it. When you tie that into Game Pass, then that's just another avenue for people to be happy, that they have these VR games available. It's another reason to draw people in as a value.
And another thing, a lot of VR games, when you watch the trailer, especially people that haven't played as much, they look at it and they're like, oh, that didn't look fun. But it's like, you don't really understand till you play it.
Right.
I think having games available on Game Pass where you can just download them and try them would open up a lot of games that people might not, that go, oh, that looks like a tech demo. And you can see that with some of these games, but they're still really freaking fun.
Yes, yeah. That's the thing. Like, they're normally, and I understand why most VR games are in the realm of 2 to 4 hour experiences. And I think that you have to keep them fairly short in order to keep people from being disoriented, number one. And then number two, it's when you're actually, I don't want to say physically, but you're virtually in these worlds, I think it can be kind of taxing on a person to play for too long.
It's tiring a lot faster, for sure.
So I think that, ideally for me, I love the idea of the wireless headset. I think that's where Quest really rocks it. There's a lot of power in that headset for a minimal amount of money. There's already this partnership with Facebook for Facebook gaming. If you were to tie that, there's also the tether that you can buy to tap into a computer with the Quest headset. So maybe that could be repurposed to actually tap into the power of the Xbox Series X or S. Yeah. And still power the more heavy-based games, but also allow you to be wireless and experience, I guess, the Facebook marketplace, the Oculus marketplace, to play some of the games that you don't need to be tethered for. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there could be a co-op there. The flip side of that is I'm not a Facebook person. We've got a Facebook for our show. I've got a Facebook profile for family, but I can't tell you the amount of times that I've thought about just shutting down the personal profile altogether.
Yeah, I'm not a big Facebook guy.
Yeah,
either.
And to me, that's the downside of going with the Quest, is you have to have that account. And as you've said, your library has to be attached to it. Mm-hmm. So I almost wonder if allowing like the Game Pass app, if they were to do that and allow you to tie through, if you could bypass maybe some of the Facebook functionality.
I would hope that if Xbox made an exclusive deal with them, that would be one of the things in place, is that they don't have to interact with this, but you get this bigger market too.
Right. It's a reason, it gives people an extra reason to pick up a headset from the Oculus side of things, but it would also give people a reason to pick up the headset, or pick up Game Pass from the Xbox side of things. That's the way that I think I would lean, other than the caveat of having to have that account. The idea of the wireless/wired ability, to me, makes the most sense. Yeah. And I think it kind of gives you a headset that's, at this point, it's a little bit more powerful than competition when you're talking consoles, and Sony. Obviously, the Switch, if you want to consider that a VR console, that's a whole different thing.
They got a Labo kit.
But specifically, when you're talking in terms of Sony, you would be not only on par, I think at this point, with the second version of the Oculus headset, it's better than what's already on the market with Sony. It doesn't mean Sony won't come up with something else.
If they were to start looking at it now, looking at the way that VR tech has grown, where is it going to be in 2-3 years when they would actually be including VR?
Exactly. So that's my argument there for the way the hardware should go. You mentioned going with, a different company. Is there any reason specifically that you would look to those?
I mean, I think with a company like HTC, which hasn't found its footing, but they made really good tech. Part of their problem is you almost had to dedicate a room to it.
Yes.
Because of the way the cameras were, and it allowed you to walk around. If they stripped that out and harness the power of the Series X, maybe they could find a pretty good relationship there where it's kind of like, we don't want to make these, you don't have a marketplace, let's work together and put out a product.
I think that's a good point. That's a good avenue. And that's also kind of where I think that possibly Samsung and their VR division, while not as boisterous as some of these other companies, might also be another good avenue to take, because Samsung isn't necessarily first and foremost identifiable with gaming.
Yeah.
But I think Samsung's probably going to be one of those companies that gets closer to Xbox as time goes on, strictly because they already have this partnership for their phones and xCloud. But I don't think we're that far away from seeing Game Pass as an app.
Yeah.
Built directly into Samsung television.
I mean, it was already teased about a Fire style stick.
Yeah, and I think that would probably sidestep the stick, or the necessity for the stick. It's just make it something that you pull up on your TV. And we know that can be done because Sony did it years and years ago when they were trying to get PlayStation Now off the ground with their televisions.
Basically, you could buy PS3 games through their televisions and just play them like that.
Right. So there is that avenue that Samsung could actually develop a headset alongside. And again, it's the thing of Microsoft not actually having to pay for the research and development of it. They would just have to facilitate the store in order to access those games, in which case Game Pass would be a great argument for that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I know what I was going to say, but then there's other, developers who are making games. It's not just going to be first-party games that people are going to want to play on these things. So they could, Microsoft, the Xbox has a great storefront. Now, I mean, there's been complaints about how you access that storefront in the past, but I do think that the newest version of your interface with Xbox has gotten better. So just coming up with something to put on the front page of here's your VR storefront might be a good way to get people into it that aren't into it right now. Yeah. I mean, I think Sony was ahead of Microsoft in taking the step into VR. I think the problem is Microsoft might have been right in saying it's just a little bit too early.
I mean, the main reason why I want Microsoft or Xbox to get into VR is because I think Xbox could really help grow VR.
I do too.
Make sure that it doesn't fall out. And the main reason for that, going back to it, is Game Pass. If you're already paying for Game Pass, you're already paying your $10 to $15 a month or whatever, and all of a sudden you start to maybe pay a little bit more attention to VR than you did before because you see that they have 30, 40 VR games on there and other people are talking about them. Because the thing is, it's a lot harder to get into a game when it's $15 standalone than when it's already with the service you're paying for.
Right, and if you're already paying for it and it's a 2-hour game, you're not going to feel like you got an undervalued product.
No, you're going to be like, oh, this thing I already paid for provided me with 2 awesome hours.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of VR's problem is people don't want to pay 15, 30, 40, 60, maybe even 70.
For a game that looks like a demo.
Well, for a game that's under 10 hours, or if it is 10 hours, I think that people get a little bit hesitant to spend that kind of money.
Especially if they haven't really invested much time in VR, because it does seem like a lot going in, but when you've played a lot of these games, you see where in some ways, even with their not as good art style, they're so immersive that if you get an awesome 2 hours, it is worth $10.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of a lot of the time with games, I equate it the value of games to movies. I don't run out and buy every $60 game when it comes out. There are games that I look at and I'm like, I can wait until it drops a little bit in price. But if I do pay a $60, price for a game, or even $70 going into this next generation, if it can provide me with anywhere from 20 to 80 hours, I feel like I get my money's worth. and that's, again, a little bit more of a barrier when you're talking something that may only be 2 hours that you may only play one time.
Yep.
That's a harder thing to...
Yeah, many of them are so puzzle-based that
Exactly.
there's not as much reason, unless you just want to speed run them, to play them through a second time.
So if you could facilitate something through Game Pass where you're automatically going to have this small library that already exists and is available, that's a value there. But then you start looking at, and this is something that I kind of let my imagination run with a little bit leading into this topic, is there are things you could do. Like, let's say Halo Infinite isn't ready to go. We know that game, especially now, looks like it's going to be pushed back an entire year. But what if you could clip out like an hour-long experience where you're Master Chief trekking through the world, and just kind of given some navigation abilities, or drive a warthog through the world?
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking, because that's a third person, and for people that maybe aren't as familiar with VR, because they always think about, the first person immersion. It's the third person. The third person stuff is what's awesome.
See, I've always thought that if you're going to make a VR game, that you want to put your antagonist if it's going to be first person, you want to put them in a position where they're going to be sitting down. So sitting down doesn't feel foreign, right? So like driving and things like that, I think could be done in first person pretty well.
Yeah.
I think that if you made a game with a character who's, and I think you could come up with a really great story of a character who is bound to a wheelchair or something to that effect. You could really do something unique and special and inclusive. But I see what you're saying, whereas the third person really benefits from it. There's been some really neat platformers that have been in VR where you move the map around and you take different perspectives that help your character get through the world.
And there's just something great about like looking over a world, and it's almost like, I guess it almost kind of, to relate it, it's like when you're a kid and how you view your toys.
Yes.
Because it's like you got this overview, everything's miniatures almost. It's so much fun. Those are for the most part, my favorite games.
And see, think if you were able to take, Xbox or Microsoft properties and apply that to little demos of the world, like little pieces that make you feel connected to it. So when a full-fledged game, does get ready to drop, you already feel familiar with it in some ways. And that's where I think, again, if you were driving around a warthog or something like that through Halo Infinite's world, like say you can't go full Halo and take out bases and things, but if you could just kind of go around the map a little bit and kind of get used to it. I mean, does that hurt your gameplay? Because it's an open world.
Yeah.
The same thing with the new Fable that's at least, coming down the pipe eventually. If you could take a horse and buggy, assuming that that's the technology that is available through Albion, I mean, people would probably... I'd pee my pants over that. I'd lose it. I would love that.
Speaking of that, I mean, it's crossed my mind so many times. What if Fable the Journey had been around now?
And I think we've talked about that a little bit before. Like, if they had... Even if they were to just kind of up the resolution on it with the technology that these new systems are going to have.
The motion controls.
Right, and then retool it, that game would be a blast to play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it did okay with Kinect, but it wasn't... You didn't feel like you had direct control over everything.
No, and it seemed like after... At least my experience after playing for a little bit of time, it just seemed like it got more and more off.
Yes. Well, and I think part of that was also just kind of getting tired of doing the same motions over and over. And that was the limit of the hardware at the time. I don't think that was the limit of development. It was just them doing the best they could with what they had.
But that game in VR, because, I mean, it would change so much, because then everything would be in 3D. The trees would be in the distance. You'd see the effect of shooting the fireball from your hand and it, like, just going way off and hitting something.
And again, that was a, 4 to 6 hour game-ish? I mean, these experiences don't have to be huge, but they could allow people to infiltrate a world that they maybe not had been interested in playing before, or maybe weren't familiar with, or the people who are diehard fans, and give them the opportunity, I mean, to
be in Albion.
Yes, and experience and get ready and get hyped. Like I would use that as a tool, as a technique, as a glorified commercial to really get people hyped for what's coming.
Here's Power Stone.
Yeah, or
run around.
Think about how easy it would be to make a Gears cover fire game.
Yep.
I mean, it'd be a little gruesome, but if you just made something along the lines of like those old arcade like Time Crisis games where it's a little bit on the rails and you hit a button to crouch down behind something, but you're able to look completely around, I think people would be really into that, even if it isn't a full-fledged game. So it's not that you're taking the place of the game that would be there, it's that you're getting these companion games to go along with it.
I think even making VR for something like Gears Tactic or Halo Wars 2 would enhance those games greatly.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
If it'd be cool to
move the battlefield around and
be able to look over it, kind of move your head, check some things out.
Well, and I mean, with that now, they've got Age of Empires and things like that they can bring to the table. That would be a really cool thing to do. Lucky's Tale was originally a VR game, wasn't it? So, I mean, they've got a connection there, too. That
seems to be where it was liked the most.
Yeah. Things like that, they've got a lot of base to do these things. Now, I don't know how much all of that would cost. I don't know what it would take or the man hours that they would have to apply to bring these games over to a functional Xbox ecosystem.
A lot of times anymore, there's studios that specialize in them. I don't know what the cost of that would be, but you could maybe do some of these without really putting any more on your studios.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've kind of covered the basis here really well, or at least from our thought perspective. Do you have anything else to add as to why?
No, I mean, I'll kind of circle back to it. They seem to have a lot of studios right now that like doing VR, so it wouldn't even be necessarily forcing on them to make like, oh no, you need to do VR because that's the thing. It seems like a lot of these studios wanted to do VR when they were independent.
Right. And so you give them an extra powerful console on top of that.
Yes, a specific platform to work on and funding, like where it's like if this VR game doesn't take off, it's not necessarily going to kill you.
Right. So, okay, so since we've established that, is there a reason that you think that they should not bother with it?
The only reason why I would say maybe they shouldn't bother with it is that it hasn't proven to be a stable market.
Right.
At this time, but at the same time, Xbox joining it would help it a lot.
And I think
for all
that's
the reasons we said.
Pretty much the way that I lean with it. I don't have a great case for them not to do it because I'm all about different avenues to play and enjoy games. But I think that, as Phil Spencer has mentioned numerous times, or as Microsoft has taken a stance on, it's not like there's these huge droves of people clamoring for it. It's not like, I mean, obviously, you could point at 5 to 10 different reasons alone, like specifically why the PlayStation 4 was more successful than the Xbox One, but I don't think VR makes that list.
No.
It's something that's extra.
Yeah.
But that's my personal opinion. I mean, there are people who might be out there pounding the table saying, no, VR is a huge reason why it was more successful. But I don't think you're going to find many.
No, I mean, it's definitely not something that you see people talking about as why Xbox didn't do well last generation.
Yeah.
And we don't even know if it'll be around in 6 years, honestly, but
I hope so.
I like it. It keeps getting better. And I mean, that's even more so than for Xbox. I'd like Xbox to get into it just to support VR. Right. That's what a lot of it comes down to, because I know I'm shuffling over the same stuff, but I think Game Pass could probably be the hugest thing that came to VR in a while. Yep. Like if they were to put a bunch of titles on there.
Yeah, it would give people who are into VR, because strangely enough, now that I say this, I do know people who are not gamers. Like, they don't have an Xbox in their house, they don't have a gaming PC, they don't have a PlayStation, and strangely enough, it's the VR that catches their attention because of casual games like the Wii was famous for. If you can play 18 holes of golf just goofing around in your living room, if you can do a little bit of boxing, Beat Saber, things like that, they draw people in without actually being like heavy game players.
That doesn't surprise me because for a few years I volunteered at a video game convention, and there was one year, it was kind of when VR was first coming around.
Yeah, I don't think the PlayStation headset was out yet, was it?
No,
Okay.
no. It was at that point pretty well recently announced, I believe. But it was when, it was like the original Oculus and HTC and things like that. And we had people, pretty good lines waiting to check it out. A lot of the parents I would talk into giving it a shot. They're like, I don't know, I don't really play games. But when you got them into it, a lot of these parents would immediately go, how much is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's a different experience than it is from everything that we've known from video gaming for the last 30 years, 40 years.
Plus, other than motion blur, it's a lot easier to get into because you don't have to know the controller. A lot of it is like reach down, click something,
it's
which
a little
is
bit more
intuitive.
Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people that didn't even play video games were picking up the games and playing them.
That's neat. That's cool. That's good to know too. And that's the thing. I think that... Do I think we'll see it soon? Not necessarily. Do I think we could see it within like 2 years if Microsoft were to go ahead and greenlight any of these ideas, or if they did want to do their own dedicated headset? I would think 2 years is, unless they just decide to come blow the doors off the place. I think that's probably reasonable if they're going to reevaluate it. I don't see anything coming before then because I think we would have heard murmurs.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of avenues they could take now, and I would think they'd probably lean towards endorsing one headset. I know you mentioned the idea of multiple places doing it, but I do think that if they can get dedicated technology, they could at least guarantee the experience a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I think that it's just kind of up to them to decide if the market's worth venturing into. But if you've already got these games and you already have this library... it's going to do is make your platform of Game Pass more appealing.
Also, I was completely blanking. I don't know to what extent, but there was a lawsuit over it. Bethesda seems to have a lot of VR tech that they own. I don't see them wanting to stop VR even after this acquisition myself.
Right. So, I don't know. I think that it's definitely something I'm hoping that the Xbox division is considering. They could stick with the PC side of it. We've seen that before. The PC ecosystem is slightly different than what you get on console, so that's feasible in itself.
Yeah, I guess they could just say, yeah, we're adding this stuff to PC Game Pass, and if you want to go buy X headset, just play it that way.
Right. But I would like to see it branch out onto console. I would also like to see it something wireless. Yeah, I guess that would be my preference. If they really want to get a leg up, if they really want people to kind of lean into that ecosystem, I think a wireless headset would be the way to go.
Or kind of setup.
Well, yes, like the Quest, where you're tethered for the more powerful stuff, but
play it through xCloud. But if you want a better experience, plug it into the console.
Right, because even if you could access some of the smaller games, like the ID at Xbox games, just to play on your headset, that would be another avenue. And once they do that, then you've got however many screens available to play your games through Xbox. You've got your television, you've got your PC, you've got your cell phone, your tablet, and then a VR headset. What are you missing?
Yep. If you say you don't have a place to play games, you just don't want to play.
Exactly. And if you don't want to play in the Xbox ecosystem, then, you're just cutting off so many different avenues for you to play with. Yep. But, I don't know. You got anything else?
Nope. Just that they should do it.
If you want to discuss this with us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Leave a comment. Let us know how you feel. We'll give you the details here in just a second. But we could ramble on about this for a while longer, but I think we just wind up covering the same things we talked about over
I've
and
already
over.
been repeating myself multiple times.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get it done.
Before we go, we'd like to thank those who helped contribute to the show. ZeroXP logo was provided by Jameson Johns. You can find him at behance.net/Jameson Johns. Music provided by Odd Reference. You can find him at facebook.com/odd.reference. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast service of choice. If we're not available on one of the ones you use, let us know. If you have any comments, questions, or constructive criticisms, you can contact us at ZeroXP Webcast on Twitter or email us at zeroxppodcast@gmail.com. If you're on the YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. Interacting these ways helps YouTube know that you like our content as Xbox and Fable fans, and helps direct fellow Xbox and Fable fans our direction.
And before we go, as always, we'd like to say thanks to those who have inspired us to do these shows. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Damien. And thank you, Xbox Pope. And as always, just stay safe out there. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye.
Play VR.
Bye-bye.